Good morning, church. Good morning, church. Good morning. Hey, we're in a 4-part series called Relationship Killers. Week 1 and 2 have been really, really good. And if you haven't been here, or maybe you missed one, go online and check it out. You're going to want to see the first 2, and of course, you're going to be here for this one. And don't miss next week. Next week's going to be great as well. This series really works together, so I hope you check these out online. This week, the topic is sex. I want you to look at the person next to you and say, the pastor is talking about sex today. Go ahead. That may have been a little awkward at first, so we're getting that out of the way to start. We are talking about sex today, and some of you are thinking, wait, K. Paul, we aren't supposed to talk about sex in church, right? And I would tell you that's a very good question, but the truth is this. Listen to this. The truth is sex is everywhere. We see it on our television. We see it on our shows that we watch, our movies. We see it in advertisements, to name a few. Recently, I heard a movie review, and the person said that the movie was great. All that was missing was a sex scene. And that's the world that we live in. Some of you might be asking, well, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? And I would respond by saying, first, it's a problem because young men and women and people in our society and our world, listen, please hear this. It's a problem because we are seeing others as objects before we see others as people. It's a problem because young men and women are growing up in a society thinking that people are objects before people are hearts, before people are humans. We see them as objects. Our world is trained right now to see the body before they see the heart, and this is called objectification. It's rampant in our world. As a result of this objectification, we see the pornography industry as massive. It generates billions and billions in annual revenues. Some may not know this, but sex trafficking is a $30 billion global industry. Sex trafficking. Did you know that 50,000 young girls are trafficked in the United States every year for sex? You think it's a problem? Do you think objectification is a problem? 50,000 young girls. And if I could just say for the record, that is not okay. Did you know that 1 in 12 youths will experience sexual victimization, including sexual assault and attempted or completed rape? That is not okay. So today I'd like to point you directly to what God says about you and I. I want to go to the beginning and look at the words of that who created us said of us. Because it's time that we move from objectification to what God says we are. And it captures it in these verses. Look at these words with me in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. God says it this way. He created mankind in his own image. Hear this, in the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God created mankind as image bearers, not as objects, not as things that we will use up and throw away and look at. He created us in his image. Listen, in the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Now I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I want you all to stand with me. Stand with me, please, if you would. If you can't stand, that's okay. We're going to read it aloud together as a church. I just want these words to just fill this room, and I want us just to all read it with all of our hearts this morning together, okay? So let's read these words. God created us, male and female, in his image and likeness, with dignity, equality, value, and worth. Now I want to go back to the verse. Go back to Genesis 1:27, if you would. Let's read that together. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female. Jesus, we bow our heads before you this morning, recognizing that you made us as something that has value. We recognize that you made us as something that has dignity, that's something that has worth. And Lord, I pray this morning that you would open our hearts and open our eyes to where we are buying into the lies of this world about objectification, about what we look like on the outside, by what the world thinks. May we not care what the world thinks. May we hear what you think this morning. So, Father, open our ears. Let us hear what you want us to hear, that we might fight for our relationships with the right words and the right understanding of what sex is in your eyes, what intimacy is in your eyes. And God, where this is already a tender topic, where this is already just really heavy and hard for some of us, maybe many of us, I just pray that you would comfort us, that you would remind us that this is a safe place, that we're going to put you in the middle of this conversation in every way. It's in Jesus' name. Let's say it together. Church, amen. Go ahead and grab a seat. I want to go back to that slide, if you would, Doug, the slide after this verse, and I want to just unpack this with you a little bit as we read these words together. You see, God created us male and female in his image and likeness with, and I want you to say these words with me again, dignity, equality, value, and worth. You see, the world tells a story that there is no dignity, there is no equality, there is no value, and there is no worth. You see, the images of the world and the story of the world when it comes to sexuality is there really is no dignity, there really is no equality. Women's bodies are meant to be used up. Men's bodies are meant to be used up. And there really is no value. The value is just what's in it for me, not what's in it for the other person, and therefore there is no worth. But today I want to just say that we're going to start with this as our compass, as our true north, that God created us, that we are image bearers made in the image of God, and we have dignity, we have equality, we have value, and we have worth. Amen? So that's how we start this conversation. That's how we start this conversation. That's how we enter into this important subject. So first, it's a problem because our world objectifies people. We see the body before we see the heart. But the second problem is, if I could just say it, the second problem is we're not talking about this. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it in our marriages. We don't talk about it when we're dating like we need to. We don't talk about it with our children, our grandchildren. We've made the topic of sex something that is awkward and socially stigmatic. We don't talk about it. We say things like, well, honey, it's time to talk about the birds and the bees. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Let me know how it goes with the kids. It's this stigma. We don't want to talk about it because it's awkward. And the tragedy in this sort of thinking is that we honestly think that one conversation is going to accomplish clarity for our kids with the sex talk. One talk, they're going to be clear, they're good. This couldn't be further from the truth. I want to get real honest with you for a moment. We've already gotten honest. The reason we don't know how to talk about sex with our children, with our families, with our loved ones, is because we really don't know how to talk about sex, even in our marriages, even in doing life with those that we're married to. It's hard. It's hard to talk about this topic. There's so much involved. But let me tell you something. Based on what we read, that we are made in his image with dignity, equality, value, and worth, I want you to hear this. The discussion of sex in marriage or intimacy in our relationships is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong conversation for all of us, especially as parents in helping our children see hearts before bodies and to recognize that sexuality isn't something that is wrong or hidden. This is a God-given gift. This is something that God designed. It is something that God made, and it's a gift given to a man and a woman when they are married. It's a gift given to friends that have connection or intimacy. But sex specifically is a gift given to a man and a woman when they are married. The world says sex is kind of like, if you had all your Christmas gifts ready 40 days before Christmas, the world would say, well, just open up the gifts and look at them and play with them and use them up every day until you get to that day, and then you can have it again on Christmas morning. Just open it up, just look at it, just play with it, because, just look at it every day until the gift is given. And the truth is, that's how we view sex. Because we don't understand that it is a gift given, we view sex as this thing that we can just kind of use and play with. And the truth is, because of that, it really does impact how we view intimacy and sexuality in marriage. So what's our goal today? Our goal today is to address what God says about intimacy and sexuality, to address what the world says about objectification, and to move from fighting with the relationships that matter most when it comes to sex and intimacy to fighting for these relationships with dignity, with value, with worth. And the first step in doing this is we move from avoiding the conversation to talking about this important topic of sex and intimacy. We move from avoiding it. We move from skirting around the issue in our marriages. We move from skirting around the issues as young single adults. We move directly towards this topic by addressing it head on, talking about it. There's a song that was sang by the popular group Salt and Peppa. You guys know that group? This song goes a little bit like this. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about... Okay, you're all sinners for knowing the rest of that song. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex, and let's talk about sex with the banner of what God says about it, right? Let's talk about sex. It's so funny, I was looking up who sang the song because I heard the words in my head, and I was asking Siri. I pushed the button for my smartphone, and I pushed the button. I said, hey, Siri, who sang the song, Let's Talk About Sex, Baby? Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about sex. And here's how Siri responded. K. Paul, I'm just a humble virtual assistant. Oh, man. It's even awkward with Siri, right? It's even awkward with Siri. We got to talk about it, y'all. We got to go there. We got to talk about these things because this is a God-given gift. And God made it, and it's beautiful, and it's worth talking about. It has value. It has dignity. So let's talk about sex. Because this is not something the world created. This is something God created. It's beautiful, and it's worth talking about, even with Siri. So let me encourage you with something. If you're in this room and you're a parent, many of us are, I want to encourage you to be the first person to talk about this with your kids. Be the first person to talk about this, because here's the deal. You're going, at 15 years old, I'm going to take them on this retreat, and we're going to go to like the woods somewhere, and we're going to talk about sex at 15. And it's all going to go great. It's going to really just be the really good conversation. And the truth is, at 15, they've already had the sex talk with 400 other people, and they started the sex talk when they were 6 at school with the person next to them who had an older brother that already had the sex talk with them. And some of you are going, yep, that's how it happened with me. My parents talked to me about the birds and the bees when I was 26. It's a little late. It's a little late. Because the truth is, sex is such a part of our world, and sex is so objectified, and the world celebrates it in the wrong ways that don't support God's heart for this important gift. And because of that, we're talking about it too late. Friends, move from avoiding the conversation to talking about it. If there's any day to talk about sex, it's today with your kids. That was pretty awkward with what Pastor K-Ball did at church, wasn't it? Talk about it. Go there with your kids. They're not too young. You might think they're too young. They're not too young. Teach them about this important topic. Be the first. Young adult Christians, maybe you're in this room, you're a young adult, and you want to follow Jesus, and you're single. I love you. I'm so glad you're here. We're better because you're with us. Talk about sex. Be the first one to talk about sex in your dating relationship. Talk about what you believe about sex and that sex is a gift. And if you don't believe it is a gift and you don't believe that it's meant for a man and a woman when they are married, then come and find a married couple that has gone through it, that has been through it, that has experienced this, that has a healthy marriage, that's following Jesus. In fact, I'll just open this up. If you're a young adult and you want to talk about sex and it's not too awkward to talk about it with your pastor, Bethany and I will talk about it with you sometime. Because it's a gift. It's beautiful. There's dignity, there's worth, there's value. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about sex. Okay, I'm not going to sing it again, I promise. When my wife and I were in premaritals, we were going through a program called Prepare and Enrich, and it's used here at Avalon, and I love it. And I'm actually walking with 2 different couples through this right now. And in this great mentoring program for couples that are getting ready for marriage, there's all kinds of topics. You talk about money, you talk about personal habits, you talk about conflict resolution, you talk about communication. But I have to be honest with you this morning, there was one conversation I didn't want to have. There was one conversation I was avoiding. It was the conversation of sex with my wife. The reason why I was avoiding the conversation of sex with my wife is because I chose to be sexually active before I got married. My wife chose to not be sexually active before she married me. And I knew that I didn't have that to offer her, but that she had that to offer me. And I was avoiding it because I thought she would look at me like I was dirty, used up, and not worth anything. That I didn't have dignity, that I didn't have worth, that I would not be what she wanted in a husband. Because you see, my filter was objectification. My filter was the world looks at us as bodies and things that you use. Things that you use up and things that you experience. And then you just put it back on the shelf when you're done with it. But the truth is, my wife, when we had this conversation, I can remember having it in the car. My hands are shaking at the steering wheel. We have the conversation. I share with her that I made some mistakes before I met her. But for the last few years, I've been following God and choosing a better path. And I called myself a born-again virgin, and I really was doing it God's way. But I still felt this shame. And she looked at me and she said, I love you, and I forgive you, and I want you. And you know what she taught me in that moment was I wasn't an object. I was someone who's made in the image of God, that I had dignity, I had equality, I had value, and I had worth. So I don't know where you are, I don't know what mistakes you've made, but maybe you can relate to me. I just want to tell you right now that Jesus went to the cross for you, and he went to the cross for me, and the blood that he shed on the cross, it wipes away and it makes clean anything that you think makes you dirty in your past decisions in this life. It cleanses, it purifies, and it's not too late to choose purity. It's not too late. You can do that today. You can start right now. Choose purity. Choose to save it for your marriage because God designed sex to be a gift in marriage. And man, is it a gift. So please talk. Please engage. Stop avoiding the conversation and start talking. Friends, it hurt when I talked to Bethany about this, but because we talked about it, it wasn't something that put a wedge in the door of our relationship. It was something that brought us closer together. So point 1, move from avoiding this conversation to talking about it. Number 2, move from repeating to reviewing. Let me ask you a question. How did the birds and bees conversation work when your parents stumbled through it with you? So why are you trying to do it with your kids? Review what works, review what doesn't work, and then engage in this conversation. Engage in this heartbeat of God that is about dignity and is about worth, and it is about something that's bigger than just what the world says is an object, something to be used. It's more beautiful, it's greater. Don't repeat what your parents did. If it worked, great. If it didn't work, engage, try something else. Review what works, do what works. For every relationship that matters, this is simply called feedback. Give feedback. Have your husbands and wives talk it out. What worked with you? What didn't work with you? And what are you going to do with it with your kids when you have this conversation? Please review. For married couples that are in the room, things change. Our bodies change. What worked 20 years ago will not work today. Somebody say amen. You got to review. You got to talk it out. You're not going to be having sex the same way you did on your honeymoon that you do when you're retired and after your retirement party, if you even have sex after retirement parties. I'm sweating. Like it's I don't know why. I don't know why I'm sweating. Guys, just talk, review. Like quit letting it be this awkward thing and review and talk about it because things change, bodies change. And we need to review, we need to work on it. It's a conversation that we have daily. It's not just a one-time thing. Things change, so talk. We might say things like this in the marriage relationship. We might say, I really like it when, ... You fill in the blank, I'm not going to do it for you. That's feedback. It feels awkward. It sounds feedback. It's true. It's what you're feeling. It's feedback. It's review. It's helpful. For those of us dating and following Jesus, you're giving Jesus all your life and you're dating somebody. This is critical in sharing, hey, I care about you, but last night we went too far. Last night we went too far and I don't want to do that again. So what do we need to do to not have that happen again? Because sex is a gift and it's for marriage and marriage only. So what do we need to do? Talk about it, review, because if you're not reviewing, you're not discussing and there's confusion. And that's our next point. If we talk and if we review, we will move from confusing sex in our relationships, marriage relationships, or if we're dating and preparing for marriage, we move from confusing it to understanding it. We have to understand where each other is when it comes to intimacy and sexuality. I learned this week from Dr. Lehman, a psychologist in the sexuality of marriage. He said, this is so fascinating. He said, the stat was 95% of women have the same reason why they're not interested in sex. Do any of you men want to know what it was? You're lying. 95% of women, he said, aren't interested in sex, marriage, aren't interested in sex. Why? Because they're weary. I found that fascinating. So oftentimes we see our spouse and we're like, well, they're not interested. They just don't seem like, why haven't they talked about sex in 2 weeks? Like, why hasn't it come up? I mean, this is supposed to be something we talk about regularly. Is it me? Did I do something? What is it? We get confused. There's confusion. And the truth is, what I learned from this statistic is many times I think for women, it's just they're tired, they're weary, they're worn down. And men are thinking about it like 99 times a minute, and women are thinking about it like one time a week. They're weary, they're tired, they think about it differently. So we have to move from confusing the situation and letting our understanding or our perception of what our partner, our marriage partner, is thinking or feeling and get to the bottom of it and talk about it and then review and then understand. Friends, please understand, because sexuality, sex in marriage is not a math equation. I saw this week, love it. Sex is not a math equation. Love is not a math equation. Love is more of a song. Let's get it on. Had to do it. There's crescendos, there's decrescendos, there's highs, there's lows. It's a dance. It's not the same. It's not a math equation. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you just said sex and your wife was like, yes? It doesn't work that way, men. You know this, and if you don't know this, I'm just telling you. It's a dance. It's knowing each other. It's talking to each other. It's reviewing. It's understanding. It's a song. So please, please, please move from confusing and misunderstanding your spouse, your partner. Move to understanding by talking and reviewing. Thirdly, move from lifeguarding to safeguarding. If you want to fight for what God says about sex and intimacy, move from lifeguarding to safeguarding. Now, here's what I mean by that. The world is this huge pool, this deep, endless chasm, deep, endless access to graphic images and words. The world is just filled with it. I mean, imagine just a huge pool. Imagine a huge pool with all these graphic images thrown in. It's just filled with these graphic images. That's the world. And for too long, the best that we can do is lifeguard. You know, someone that we love or care about, they fall in the pool. They fall to the temptation of looking at pornography. They fall to the temptation of watching an R-rated movie because they know there's going to be a sex scene. They fall in that pool, and the best that we can do is just lifeguard. We're sitting at the edge of the pool as parents or spouses, just hoping our partner or son and daughter won't fall into the pool again. And when they do, we'll ground them, we'll throw in a lifesaver, we'll pull them out. But listen to me. If we're going to really do this well, we need to move from lifeguarding to safeguarding. And here's what I mean. I want you to look at Proverbs 4:23. Safeguarding is about guarding something more. It's about guarding the heart. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Parents, this is about guarding the hearts of your children. It's not just about preventing them from seeing things or rescuing them when they do. It's about guarding their heart. It's about creating an environment in your home and in your relationships where you are guarding their heart. Why? Because everything flows from our heart. And these images and these stories that the world is telling is invading our hearts. And we start believing that sex really does look like the porn star having sex or whatever it may be. And we stop believing that sex is about dignity and value and worth and about two people coming together representing the image of God. So guard your heart, guard your children's heart. The proverb writer says it further by saying in verse 25 and 26, he says, let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Make level paths for your feet and take only ways that are firm. Now, I want to unpack that in a moment, but before I do, I have a story that will explain this a little more. I was 5 years old. My sisters were 8 and 9, and we're driving in our 1984 Astro minivan. And we're driving into downtown Fort Wayne, and we look to the left, and there's a naked man on the side of the street. Totally naked. Naked. And my mom immediately, I'm 5, sisters 8, 9. My mom goes, ah! Ah! And she goes, boom, like that, right over my eyes. My sisters are like this. Whoa! They're like, whoa, naked man. Now, we laugh about it to this day because my mom covered my eyes. Not my sister's eyes, right? Oh, man. Now let's unpack this verse together. Let your eyes, it says, let your eyes look straight ahead. It says 3 words, fix, make, take. Now I love this verse. This verse is such a beautiful path to purity, this beautiful path to doing this right, to letting our eyes focus on what matters. See, friends, for me, this isn't just about covering our kids' eyes and being the lifeguard. Like, cover your eyes, bad scene in a movie, cover your eyes, lifeguard. It's about safeguard. It's about teaching them how to let their eyes look straight ahead. It's teaching our kids and our spouses and each other and hold each other accountable to fixing your gaze directly before you. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Make level paths for your feet and take only ways that are firm. Friends, if you're a parent and you're in this room, don't lifeguard your kids. Safeguard their life. Teach them to cover their eyes. Teach the little girls in the car to go, whoop! Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Fix, make, take. Dads, this is going to be hard, but listen to this. When you're walking with your sons and your daughters along the path of life and you see a beautiful woman, will you just let your eyes look straight ahead? Because, it's interesting. I grew up with some influences in my life where I saw the men in my life, the men in my life would take an extra long look. And they would look down, they would look up, they would look down, and they would look up. I never understood that. And we say things like, it's just the menu. But the truth is, we're teaching our kids that it's okay to look at women or it's okay to look at men as objects, not people. Stop. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Make level paths for your feet. Take only ways that are firm. Husbands, if you're in this room and you're listening to anything I'm saying, your standard of beauty is your spouse, period. She is your fix. She is your gaze. She is what you set your eyes upon. She is what you think about. She is beautiful and worth fighting for. In Jesus' name, amen. Make level paths for your feet. Put filters on every device in your house. Put filters on your computer. Put filters on your smartphone. Our smartphones, men access pornographic images on their smartphones all the time, on the way to work, on the way back. Women do as well. Women have the same addiction as men do. Put a guard on your phone. Get a filter that alerts someone that's holding you accountable. Put a filter on your TV. Put fences around your house. Put fences around your computers. Put fences around your iPads. Put fences around it. Because the truth is, Satan knows that there's a highway of graphic images just flowing into your home. Flowing into your home. And if we don't safeguard our home, he's just got an enemy behind the lines, attacking with graphic images and stories of the world. Parents, show your sons and daughters how to take the level path, how to fix their gaze directly before them. Look at this final point. Move from lust to trust. I did my best to try to make an acronym of these points because I learned this week that the number one thing that brings this all together, if we are to talk about this with dignity and value and respect and look at people as image bearers of God, we are to do so by building trust. The world spells sex, L-U-S-T. Instant gratification. The world spells sex, lust. And it happens like this. Lust, friends, listen, will leave you hiding in the dark rooms of sin. Lust will have you hiding in dark rooms, looking at dark images, objectifying women and men. Lust will leave you repeating patterns of shame and disgrace. Lust will have you repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat versus reviewing, talking. It will have you repeating patterns of shame and disgrace. Listen, lust will leave you confused and angry. Lust will lead you to drowning in the pool of graphic and hurtful images. Lust will leave your loved ones alone, hurting, afraid, and unable to trust while you are off feeding your desire of lust. Sex and intimacy done God's way, though, friends, is spelled differently. It's spelled like this: trust. T-R-U-S-T. Trust will give permission to share your heart and talk about what's really going on. Listen, trust will bring you to places of grace and beautiful honesty to review how you're feeling, to review what's working, to review what's not working. Trust will make intimacy clear instead of confusing. Trust will build safeguards around your home and around your relationships, and safeguards will build trust. Listen, trust is what this all comes down to. John Huddlestone, who is a dear brother and a friend and leads one of the leaders of the marriage class at Avalon. By the way, if you're going to that class, you rock. John is a counselor, family life and marriage counselor, and I asked for his wisdom on this topic this week, and I want to share with you exactly what he shared with me. John says this: first and foremost, it has to be built on the foundation of trust. Relationships, sexuality, first and foremost, it has to be built on the foundation of trust. He says that is paramount. It's about creating safe spaces for two people to be able to talk and share openly and honestly about their feelings and thoughts without reprisal of rejection, judgment, or exploitation. He says it's about the ability to interface in two-way reflective communication that allows us to know another and to be known. And he summarizes it in this way. Look at this slide. Sex done God's way, intimacy done God's way is this. It's trust. It's saying, into me see. Intimacy. It's saying, I trust you with me. Intimacy. As we close, I want to review one more time. How do we move forward in fighting for our relationships? How do we fight this vicious worldly view of objectification and move towards being image bearers of God with dignity and value and worth? We do so by moving from avoiding the topic to talking it out, by moving from repeating what we've always done to reviewing and learning and engaging and doing it better, by moving from confusing to understanding. Don't let confusion drive your sex life, your intimacy. Understand, be clear. Move from lifeguarding to safeguarding your home, your life, your heart. And finally, move from lusting to trusting.